Okay, so I'm going to calibrate this pressure gauge using EasyCal and the 8030 automatic pressure calibrator. This gauge is a 40 bar gauge and we've connected it to the outputs of the 8030. The first thing in EasyCal is to enter the instrument data, which I've already entered here, and it captures the information about the unit under test, such as the manufacturer, model and serial number. And we can also attach a procedure which describes how to test this pressure gauge. So we'll go and create that procedure by closing the instrument database, and we'll go to the procedure database. We'll create a new procedure, and I want to tell EasyCal we've got a pressure indicator analog. Okay, I'm going to call this pressure gauge 40 bar. Okay, so I'll edit the test, and because EasyCal knows that this is a pressure indicator analog, there's a wizard button which will bring up a wizard for creating tests for a pressure indicator analog. So I enter the pressure range of the indicator. In this case it's 0 to 40 bar, and I can also enter a tolerance for the test. So I'm going to test it to 0.5% of the range, and the method is going up in pressure and then down with 5 test points. Click on create, and it creates all the tests required for this procedure. So because I chose up and then down with 5 test points, it's 0, 10, 20, 30, 40 bar, and then falling again. So I can close this procedure, and here it is in the procedure list. Okay, so now I'm going to go into the instrument list, and here's the instrument that I created with the UUT information. I can now add the procedure that we've created, which is this pressure gauge, 40 bar, and it's assigned this procedure to this instrument. I can click on calibrate now. Before I start the calibration run, I have the opportunity to enter data about the calibration in particular. What's the operator performing the calibration, environment conditions, any comments I want to appear on the certificate before I do the calibration. But I'm just going to click on OK to start. So for these tests, we adjust the input pressure to the unit under test so that it reads an exact value. Press continue to go to the first test. And here we can see the input is, well, it's close to 0 bar. We can actually press 0 on the calibrator to ensure that our master instrument is reading 0 before we started, and the unit under test is reading 0. So I'm happy with that, and I can press enter. And it takes me on to the next test, which is the first step, which is 10 bar. And the pressure controller has increased the input pressure to the unit under test up to 10 bar. And if my unit under test is not showing exactly 10 bar, I can adjust the input pressure until it does. In this case, I can see that the needle is exactly over the 10 bar marker. So I'm quite happy with that. I can press enter to go to the next test. So the next test point is at 20 bar. Again, the needle is exactly over the 20 bar marker on the unit under test. So I can press enter to record that result and go on to the next test point. the needle on the gauge exactly over the 30 marker. So I record that result and go on to the next test. Now on this test, the needle on the unit under test is actually reading slightly over the 40 bar marker. So I can actually reduce the input pressure until the unit under test reads exactly 40 bar. So I'll use the step buttons. Until the needle is over the 40 bar marker. And you can see on the EasyCal we have an input pressure from the calibrator which is 39.80 bar, and the unit under test reads 40. So when I press enter, it will capture this information. And we're going to go back down the pressure range. So the next point down is 30 bar. The needle is exactly over the 30 bar marker, so I'll go to the next test point. Again, the needle's over the 20 bar marker. Go to the next test point. Okay, now I'll go to the final test point, which is back to 0. Because it's 0 pressure, the pressure calibrator, 8030, has opened the vent valve to vent the system to atmosphere. And my unit under test should be reading 0, which it is. So I can push enter to record that final result. And at the end of the test run, EasyCal gives a summary of how many tests would pass. Press OK. And here's a summary of the results. So I click on Save Results. I can enter some more comments and confirm to save the results. EasyCal will say about the certificate number it's generated, and I can preview that. To have a look at the certificate. On the second page is the results. And you can see the input pressure and the unit under test reading that we've recorded going through the calibration run. And where I had to adjust the input pressure at the 40 bar test point, where the input pressure was 39.8. In particular, this result is shown here.